podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
What's good, boys and girls? True Footed Podcast. Today is Monday. It is the 19th of August and the Premier League is back. The first weekend is almost in the books. We do have one game tonight. That will be Leicester City versus Tottenham. But 9 games have taken place. So let's have a quick look at those. Manchester United 1, Fulham 0. Joshua Zirkzee with the debut goal, coming off the bench to rescue the victory for United, who frankly weren't very good in the game. It wasn't the most exciting start to a Premier League season that we've ever seen, but it was never going to be. These are not exciting teams to watch. United had more of the ball and more shots, but Fulham did cause them quite a few problems. They couldn't really cope with Adama Traore. We saw United line up with Mazraoui and Dalot as the fullbacks, Maguire and Martinez in the middle, Casemiro and Menu in midfield, Diallo, Mount and Rashford behind Bruno Fernandes. So Mazraoui, the only one of the summer signings to start the game. Obviously, no Lenny Yoro at the moment. De Ligt came on, Zirkzee came on. Zirkzee gets the goal. Garnacho should also have scored, but managed to fluff probably the best chance he's going to get all season after a dreadful mistake by Calvin Ramsey and good work by Marcus Rashford. I'm not sure how any United fan could blame Rashford for Garnacho missing from there, but blame him, they tried. For Fulham, I think we saw the weaknesses in that team. Soft in midfield and scattergun at the back. Bassi, there's talent there, no question. But he would drive you insane with some of the poor fundamental errors he makes. He really would. Leno, to his credit, made a couple of good saves and kept the scoreline respectable. Otherwise, it could have been 3 or 4. Now, in truth, Fulham should have scored as well. But United, it was one of those weird games where 1-0 actually did reflect the game and the control they had, but it could easily have been 3. Like, Leno made one really good save and Garnacho missed that sitter. Otherwise, it could have been 3-0 and nothing different would have happened, but you still wouldn't have watched it and thought, United have been really good here. But a win is a win, and that's all they'll care about. So we move on to Saturday. Ipswich 0, Liverpool 2. Ipswich started really well. First half, they were excellent, probably the better team. Liverpool looked disjointed. They looked unsure of themselves. The midfield was a mess. The attack couldn't get anything going, and they looked a little bit all over the place. Ipswich ran the legs out of themselves. And when they came out in the second half, they just didn't have the same energy. Liverpool made a change at half-time, bringing on Konate for Quansah, and just took control. And played through Ipswich time and time again. Should have gone 1-0 up through Diaz. He managed to lift his effort over the bar. Should have gone 1-0 up through Jota. He put a simple header wide. Did go 1 up then through Jota after a really nice team goal. Konate to Gravenberch to Trent. Trent split the defence with a pass for Salah. He could have gone himself, but chose to feed Jota, and Jota finishes with the plum. It is 1-0, and 5 minutes later it's 2-0. It's game over. Mo Salah scores after good work by Szoboszlai. Another nice team goal, it must be said. They could have scored a third because Mo had another chance. They could have got another one when Conor Bradley had a great chance. So in truth, Liverpool could have won 6-0, but it wouldn't have been a fair reflection on the overall state of the game. Because the first half, they were very poor. Second half, they were excellent. But Ipswich gave them so much more time in the ball, so much more space, and carried so little of an attacking threat in the second half. But I still maintain Ipswich will stay up. I think they're going to be fine. I think when you look at the team that started yesterday, you had Greaves start, you had Hutchinson start, you had Delap start. But Smodics didn't start. Phillips didn't play. He was on the bench but didn't play. Jens Kahoust looks like that deal will get done, hopefully. So that's another one they'll get across the line. And then we'll see what they do from there. But Smodic's coming in, Phillips coming in, and Cahoot's coming in. That will significantly improve that team, make them much harder to play against, and in Sammy Smodic, give them an even bigger, give them more of a goal threat than what they carry at the moment. I think Ipswich are going to be fine. It's a really good start for Liverpool, though. Really good second half, and something that they can build on. Moving on. Arsenal 2, Wolves 0. A very comfortable afternoon for Arsenal for the most part. Now, Wolves did cause them some trouble, and David Raya made one outstanding save from Strand Larsen. But you just felt like Arsenal were easing the way into the season. They opened the scoring on 25. It's a lovely cross from Saka and a great header from Kai Havertz. And then on 74, Saka makes it 2. You'd question the defensive work. It wasn't great. Aït-Nouri gave him too much space, and the midfielder, I think it was João Gomes on that side, didn't help across. And Saka was able to just work his way into the box and drive a shot that I thought Sa should have done better with. It wasn't, it was hit well, but it wasn't a rocket. It was a good savable height, and it was near post. Maybe he was unsighted, but I thought he should have done better. But a comfortable win for Arsenal nonetheless. For Wolves, very clear signs that they need to go out and buy in the remaining 12 days of this transfer window. Everton 0, Brighton 3. Matoma opens the scoring on 25. Welbeck makes it 2 on 56. Adingra wraps it up on 87. Everton had claims for a penalty, which was awarded and then on review was revoked. I thought the referee ultimately got it right. Dunk slides in to block a Calvert-Lewin shot. Calvert-Lewin doesn't shoot, puts his foot down, steps on Dunk as Dunk is sliding, and his foot goes from underneath him. There is contact, obviously, but it is contact that Calvert-Lewin initiated. So for me, no penalty, right decision, and Brighton just looked the much better team. Everton didn't really have much going forward. They looked hapless defensively. Now, both sides were missing some players, but Brighton were missing, I would say, more important players, especially Verbruggen in goal. It's going to be a long season for Everton. It just is. You can just tell it's going to be a long season for them. Now, they're still trying to be active and get stuff done in the market. But when you look at the window Brighton are putting together and continuing to work on adding more, Matty O'Reilly's name's coming back up. Kadiaglu's name continues to be there. Buscagli's name is there. If they get those three across the line, I feel like there might be a sale coming. I feel like there might be somebody they're preparing to sell for a significant amount of money, but we'll wait and see. But you look at that Brighton team, they had Hinchelwood playing left back. No Estupiñán. No Verbruggen. No Evan Ferguson. No Enciso. No Gruda. They will be scary going forward this year. Everton, though. I mean, they set out, I didn't understand Michael Keane starting because he's been awful for years, but they had Ashley Young starting at right back. Now, I get that they're missing Patterson and Coleman, but Ashley Young should not be playing Premier League football anymore. Michael Keane, at best, should be your fourth centre-back. Can't be starting on the opening day. Mason Holgate, who they deemed no use last year and loaned him out twice, he's coming off the bench. Iliman Ndiaye, they spent a decent amount of money on him in the summer. He's coming off the bench. Jake O'Brien, they spent big money on. He's on the bench while Keane is starting. Lindstrom, they brought in on loan. He's on the bench, doesn't see the field. Just a really bad day for Everton all over the place. And I thought Dyche himself had a poor day. Newcastle won, Southampton 0. If Southampton wanted a gift to go in their favour and give them an opportunity to go to Newcastle and win on the opening day of the season, this was it, with Fabian Schär sent off after 28 minutes. Brereton Diaz initiated the whole thing by clattering into Schär and sending him face planting to the floor. But Schär is stupid. He gets up, pushes. Brereton Diaz steps back towards him. Now, he doesn't headbutt him, but he does dip his head and then put his forehead into Diaz. It's not a headbutt, but it is contact with the head. By the letter of the law, it is a red card, but Jesus wept. I mean, Ben Brereton Diaz should be ashamed of himself, the way he went down and rolled around on the floor. That was it for Southampton. 10 men. Newcastle, not at full strength, missing Botman. Dan Burn playing centre-back. No Tonali back yet. Jacob Murphy playing on the right wing. Now, I did like the look of the two fullbacks in Livramento and Hull. Pope had a great game. Guimaraes was an absolute workhorse in there. But Southampton just couldn't find that final pass. They were shooting too early in moves. I don't know whether they were trying to catch Pope out or they were just trying to score spectacular goals. But there was opportunities where Armstrong and others were taking shots when there was passes on that would have led to better shots. Brereton Diaz should have scored in the first half with a free header at the back post. But he decided to try and bullet head it when all he needed to do was head it down into the ground or just redirect it. Instead, it was Southampton that gave Newcastle the gift. Alex McCarthy, who should not be starting games, with a very, very poor attempted pass, gifts it to a Newcastle player. Ball finds its way to Joelinton, and he finishes well. Newcastle at home, right? Even with 10 men at home, 22% of the ball. Eddie Howe's love of a counter-attack knows no bounds. Great win for the Toon, given the circumstance. Southampton are going to be disappointed with that one. They have to be, and if they're not, you'd be asking questions. Nottingham Forest won, Bournemouth won. So this game started on a horrible note. Ball goes up in the air in the middle of the park. Semenyo and Danilo go up for it. Their legs get tangled as they come down. And Danilo suffers a horrendous-looking injury. It looked to me... Now, I'm not watching replays. I watched what had happened at the time, and I watched one replay. It looked to me like potentially a break and a dislocation, which just isn't nice. He is going to be out for months now, and that's a massive blow. He is the best midfielder at the club. A really, really good player. And I was really expecting a big season from him this year. And now he's going to miss at least half the season, you'd imagine. Look, Forest didn't let it get to them. And Chris Wood put them in front on 23 minutes, following up after the goalkeeper Neto had saved a fairly tame shot. Wood made it 1-0. Then Bournemouth get themselves level through Ouattara, but it's ruled out for an offside in the build-up. Forest had a bunch of good chances and just couldn't take any of them. And then Bournemouth punished them. Anton Semenyo with the late goal on 86 minutes to give Bournemouth a point that they'll be very, very happy with heading back down to the South Coast. Forest, again, look like a team that need to still do one or two bits, not 7 or 8. Don't be Nottingham Forest of the last 2 years, but there's definitely one or two things they need to do in the remaining days of this transfer window. They are been linked with a striker. We'll see if anything comes from it. But I looked at that defence that started. Now, again, look, people are injured, people are not ready for the season, whatever the case may be. But why is Omar Bamadeli sitting on the bench and Willy Bolly is starting? How is it that Harry Toffolo is still playing Premier League minutes in the year of our Lord 2024 when he hasn't been good enough to date for 2 seasons? Finally got the midfield group I wanted to see. Sangaré, Danilo, Elanga, Gibbs-White and Hudson-Odoi. Really, really looking forward to seeing it. And it lasted a couple of minutes because Danilo got hurt. It's going to be a long season. Forest are going to be in that group of teams that could go down, but I do think they've got enough individual quality that if the manager makes the right decisions, they can stay up. That defence, though, that can't be your defence. Can't be playing willy-bolly big minutes in this season. West Ham 1, Aston Villa 2. This was the late kickoff on Saturday, and Amadou Onana took 4 minutes to open his Villa account, heading home from a corner. Lucas Paqueta equalised on 37 minutes from the penalty spot. It was a penalty. Matty Cash, just clumsy, is all it was. Clumsy in a tackle on Souček. It was a penalty. Paqueta steps up and scores. Looked like we were heading for a 1-1. It was a very even game, and I don't think anybody could have suggested a draw wouldn't have been fair. But Jean Duran steps up on 79 after a lovely move involving Maatsen and Ramsey and makes it 2-1. And Villa get the win and up and running for the new season with their aim of, consolidating a place in the European positions, not necessarily Champions League. But I think Villa, if you were to ask them honestly, if they could be in Europe every year with maybe the Champions League every third or fourth year, I think they'd actually be quite happy with that. Now, I know there's people there, and including the owners, who have higher ambitions than that. I know the fan base have quarters that have higher ambitions than that. But I do think the majority would be very happy just seeing Villa be sort of what they were under Martin O'Neill. I think they'd be very happy with that, just being in that top 6, top 7 every year, and then maybe getting Champions League every 3 or 4 years, having a good run there, picking up some cups. I think they'd be thrilled with that. And when you're honest and open about the hierarchy of the Premier League, that would be great success for Villa. If you consider the finances and cheating that goes on in the blue side of Manchester, the finances and cheating that's gone on in West London, Liverpool, United, the finances in Newcastle, Arsenal, Spurs, I think if Villa are in that group and finishing above 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of them, I think that's incredible. But let's be honest, to finish above all of them, to win the league, it's probably a step too far. Now, I'm talking about the next 10 years. I don't think Villa win the league in the next 10 years. Beyond that, though, if they continue to build strong foundations, if they continue to grow the commercial side of their club, it could happen organically, where in 15 years, we're looking at Villa as a 2-time Premier League winner. It could happen. I just don't see it happening the next kind of 10 years. But Man City and Chelsea both face uncertain futures. City's case will be heard next month. And Chelsea have a reckoning coming, both for their blatant disregard for profit and sustainability since Todd Bowley took over, and the historical element of the cheating that took place under Roman Abramovich. So we'll see what happens. Brentford 2, Crystal Palace 1. Palace, the most disappointing team of the weekend for me. Really didn't feel like they played anywhere close to their potential. The lack of Olise was massive for them. You could tell they were missing his creativity and his ball carrying. But there's a lot of noise around them at the moment. Obviously, speculation on Guehi, a lot of talk about Wharton, speculation on Eze. That's going to have an effect. We had Czech Doucouré coming off the bench. He's still not up to speed, but when he is, him and Wharton is going to be a great midfield pairing. I still think that the Crystal Palace are going to have a good season. I still think they're a strong contender for a top half finish. But this wasn't the start they wanted. So they go 1-0 down. Mbomo scores on 29. Brentford just catch them on the counter. Really well worked goal. And Brentford catch them on the counter. Ethan Pinnock puts through his own net to give Palace the equaliser on 57. It's a good ball played across. It's very poor from Ayer at the back stick. Mistimes his jump, doesn't really get off the ground a lot. Munoz comes in, heads back across goal, and Pinnock should probably do better, but he's trying to clear it, trying to make an intervention, and unfortunately puts it into his own net. But on 76, Vissa scores to make it 2-1 to Brentford, and Brentford, who had no Ivan Toney in the matchday squad, with speculation mounting that he could be heading to Saudi Arabia, which would be very, very disappointing, but would be understandable from a financial point of view for him, because when you look at his career, he has spent most of it playing in the lower leagues. He's not going to be on huge money at Brentford. The contract he's on, I'm pretty certain, is the contract they signed him on. Like, I don't think he's had a new deal. I think he signed a 5-year deal when he went there. He's had 4 years there. So he's probably still on, very low money for a Premier League striker with his pedigree. So if he does choose to go, it'll be very hard to criticise him too much. But it would be a little bit disappointing to see an England international aged 28 head for Saudi. Final game then. Chelsea 0, Man City 2, Haaland on 18, Kovacic on 84. Chelsea had some nice patterns of play. They looked hopeless defensively whenever City really tested them. The midfield didn't work. Caicedo and Lavia with Enzo as a 10. Like, this is what you brought Maresca in for? Palmer and Nkunku on the wings, so no real pace, and Nicholas Jackson up front. Madness. Absolute madness. Raheem Sterling left out of the squad among a lot of other players that were left out of the squad. It was predictable, but yet it was still disappointing from Chelsea. For City, they didn't even need to get out of first gear. It was very, very comfortable. Very, very comfortable. Now, Jackson, there's an argument he should have scored. He had one decent headed chance, but just doesn't offer anything in and around the box. He's good in build-up play. He works hard. He chases balls. He works the channels. He occupies defenders. His layoffs are good. He holds the ball up well. He's good in the air outside the box, but inside the box, he just looks... He's two different players. He looks like Drogba outside the box and like a raffle winner in the box. It's absolutely bizarre. And yet we're 1.3 billion in spending into this experiment, because I'm not going to call it a project, because projects are planned and executed with precision. This is an experiment. And that's the team they're putting out. I understand they've got a couple of injuries, but that's... If you take out the players they signed this summer, because it's too early to judge them, obviously. Some of them haven't played. Some of them have played one game. Some of them have played parts of a game. Take out this summer signings. Then take out the couple of signings that are due to arrive in time. So Estevao, Kendrick Paez, and Anselminho. I think that's the three. There might be another one, but that's the three I can think of. I believe it's 27 players that they have signed outside of those three youngsters and the ones that have come in this summer. Now take out Cole Palmer and you're left with 26 players. Now name me the successes. Because you can't. You just can't. You could make an argument for Malo Gusto, but it's not a strong argument. You couldn't make an argument for any of the other defenders that have been brought in. You couldn't make an argument for any of the midfielders that have been brought in. And aside from Palmer, you can't make an argument for any of the attackers. Now, I understand Nkunku missed a chunk of last season, and Lavia missed most of last season, and Fofana missed all of last season. I get that. Fofana also missed a big chunk of the season before after he joined. I get all of that, but injuries are part of football. And Fofana was injury-prone before you signed him. Lavia is a very young player. Injuries happen to young players. Start to up the workload, start to upload the stress on their bodies and their muscles, and injuries happen. Nkunku, that's the one where you'd say, do you know what, that's quite unfortunate because he didn't have a huge track record of injuries before you signed him, and yet you got him, and all of a sudden... Actually, do you know what? Forget what I've just said. He did have a track record of injuries. So, the season before they signed him, he missed... Do you know what? No, I'm not even going to give them a pat. He didn't have... When they signed him, when they agreed terms on him, it was early in the 22-23 season. So he didn't have a track record of injuries. And the reason I thought that was because Liverpool were very keen on him and Klopp insisted on Núñez over him. And I remember looking and thinking that Núñez was the bigger risk, both stylistically and because of a track record of knee injuries. And in Nkunku, there wasn't really anything there. He'd had an ankle problem and a groin injury that had cost him 9 combined games. And that was it. And a back issue that cost him 1 game. That was it in his career up until the beginning of 22-23. And I think Chelsea did that deal in around the October originally. Then he tore a knee ligament in November and was out till February. He came back. He was back playing less than 3 weeks, and he tore a muscle fibre, and he missed 8 games. So after they signed him, he missed 21 games through injuries. Now, of course, they could potentially have cancelled that deal because nothing was signed, nothing was actually done and dusted, but they chose to push ahead. He joins, he hurts his knee, he misses 15 games, he comes back, he's not fit enough to play, so he misses another couple of games. He's back, he plays for about 3 weeks, he hurts his hip. He misses 5 games, he's back a month, he hurts his hamstring, and that's basically him done for the season. And he missed 39 games through injuries. So, no real track record. 10 games missed in his career, all told, including having COVID. And then, after Chelsea signed him, he goes on to miss 61 games. And the thing with me is, when I look at a club and their transfer track record over a shortened period of time, you can tell whether it's bad scouting or just a bad club. United, over the last decade, bad club. Chelsea, since about 2000, bad club. For players to go to, bad club. Like, it can't just be that all the players are bad. It just can't. And if we take a little wander back over the years with Chelsea and look at post-transfer ban, so starting in the summer of 2020, Ziyech, flop. Werner, flop. Chilwell, he was okay, now they want rid of him. Havertz, flop, but did score the winner in a Champions League final. So that makes up for the poor performances. But you couldn't call it a success. You couldn't say he was great for them because 3 years later they sold him at a loss. Edouard Mendy was good to start with and then fell off a cliff. That, Ziyech, Werner, Chilwell, Havertz, Mendy, and Thiago Silva came in on a free. That was hailed by many as the greatest transfer window anyone had ever had. Now, they did go on and win the European Cup, but they were a mess most of that season, and they won the European Cup because they sacked Frank Lampard and brought in Tuchel. The following season, they bring in Lukaku. Flop. They bring in Saul on loan. Flop. There's no way you can look at that and think, this is weird that all these players are going there and flopping. Summer 2022. Sterling, flop. Koulibaly, flop. Hutchinson was an academy signing, and obviously they made a big fee on him, so fair play. Slanina, we don't know yet. Chukwuemeka, Christ knows. Kukureya has not been good. Caicedo, they want rid. Fofana, he's been injured. Aubameyang, flop. Winter of that year, Badiashile, flop. Datro Fofana hasn't got an opportunity. Andre Santos hasn't got an opportunity. Mudryk, flop. Mudeki, hasn't been great for them at all. Hasn't been great. Not a flop, but hasn't been a success. Gusto hasn't been a success. Not a flop, but hasn't been a success. Enzo, for what they paid for him, you'd be shifting him towards the flop range at this point 18 months in. But most of that is because they've got no idea how to use him. They brought in Dennis Zakaria on loan, flop. João Felix on loan, flop. And then after we thought, okay, well, they've got that crap out of the system now. Now they'll be serious. Nicholas Jackson, meh. Nkunku, injured. Angelo Gabriel hasn't gotten an opportunity. Leslie Ogochukwu hasn't gotten an opportunity. Axel Disasi hasn't been good. Robert Sanchez hasn't been good. Moises Caicedo has not been good. He hasn't been a £100 million midfielder. And again, like with Enzo, it's because they don't know how to use him. Like I said it all last season, Enzo and Caicedo doesn't work. Enzo and Lavia won't work. And Caicedo and Lavia won't work. Not against the elite. Because all three of them want to play in the same space. And in midfield, partnership and skill sets that mesh are the most important things. The most important things. Think back to a lot of the great midfields over the years and why they worked. Keane and Scholes worked like a dream. Skill sets that had enough that overlapped that it made sense to play them together, but they meshed really well. And the different things they brought worked brilliantly. Keane and Varane, not so much. Varane and Scholes didn't work at all. Vieira and Petit, perfect. Vieira and Gilberto Silva, perfect. Gilberto Silva and Cesc, not as good. Two excellent players, not as good. Cesc and Matic, meh. Cesc and Kante, not good. Kante and Matic, outstanding. Skill sets have to mesh, otherwise it's not going to work. And Moises is an outrageously talented player with a massive, massive ceiling, and they have no idea how to use him. Lavia, it looks the same. It looks the same. Lavia was the best of the three yesterday because he got to play in the role that all three want to play in. They don't have the right partner for any of them. They don't have the right partner for any of them. Alexis McAllister is the perfect partner for Moises Caicedo. João Neves would be a great partner for him. João Neves or Alexis would also be a good partner with Lavia. That's why Liverpool wanted either of them to come in and partner Alexis. With Enzo, you want either an Onana. Onana would also work with Moises. He would also work with Lavia, and we'll see that for Belgium for a long time. Onana is a malleable player whose best strengths are going box to box, and he will fit next to a sitting midfielder like that. The other type you'd want with Enzo is an Ederson or Ugarte type. The best we've seen of Enzo in Europe still is that 6 months at Benfica next to Florentino Luis. That's the type of midfielder he needs next to him. The only other way you get the best of Enzo is if you play a flat four in midfield. Like Argentina do. And you slow the game down. That's not what Chelsea want to do, and they don't have the players to do it. That's the only way Moises and Enzo works, or Moises and Lavia, or Lavia and Moises, is that you play a flat four in midfield and maybe look to be more of a counter-attacking team that tries to slow the game down and then speed it up when you get opportunities. Doing what they're doing is just a nonsense. Lavia would be in the same boat as Nkunku obviously missed most last season. David Washington hasn't had an opportunity. Dorde Petrovic was decent for them last year. They've bought 2 goalkeepers this summer. And then Cole Palmer has been a success. And that's it. The only success has been Cole Palmer. Of the players they've bought and sold, they've lost money on all of them bar Omari Hutchinson. Lost big on Koulibaly, lost on Kovacevic, lost on Mendy, lost on Kai Havertz, lost everything on Aubameyang because he obviously left on a free. Who else left this summer that's been bought in under this clown show? Ozajic, he was before Bowley, but it's in this last 4-year period that we're looking at. Lost on him. Like, it just not good at all. Not good at all. They will claim that they made a 1.7 million profit on Moreira. They sold him to themselves. They sold him to Strasbourg. A shambles. An absolute shambles. Right, away to break. Back after this. Right, welcome back. So, with 12 days left in the Premier League transfer window, we are going to pick one player from each club that needs to leave this summer. So, we'll go alphabetically, as we do. Arsenal is easy. It's Kieran Tierney. He just needs to get away. He is still, by far, the best left-back they own. He is better than Zinchenko, and that's the only other left-back they have. But Jurrien Timber is going to play left-back. Calafiori, I'd imagine, will play left-back. Tomiyasu can play left-back, and it's very clear that Arteta doesn't want anybody who wasn't there, who he didn't bring in other than Saka, Martinelli, and Saliba. And of course, he did want originally to get rid of Saliba, but has had his mind changed. Kieran Tierney is a very good player. Now, he is injury prone and that's held him back, but he needs to get as far away from Arsenal as he possibly can and go and have his career. Really good player, but needs a new start. Aston Villa. Now, and again, I'm going to do this where it's not a player that I think they need to get rid of, but just a player who, for his own good, needs to move on and go play somewhere else. And it's become clear that the left-back situation with Digne insisting he wants to stay and Maatsen being the big money signing, it's quite clear that Alex Moreno needs to move on. I think Emery said over the weekend you can consider that he will leave the club. So, yeah, I think it's going to be him. The other one I would put into that group, who I think, just for the sake of their career, should probably move on, is Leander Dendoncker. Because they've got Kamara to come back, right? But he won't be back for another number of months. But they've got Onana in. He can play the 6. They've brought in Baranchia. He can play the 6. Ross Barkley will probably play in midfield ahead of him as well as a new signing. And I just don't see a future for Leander Dendoncker there. So for his own sake, he should also move on. Bournemouth. I feel like Hamid Traore is the one. Now, I think he's very, very talented. I think he could be really, really good. But he doesn't seem to have impressed Iraola. And he's obviously had some ups and downs with some injuries. He's had some issues with his health. He was on the bench at the weekend. He had malaria, I think. He was on the bench at the weekend. He was not one of the 5 players brought on. I would say Hamid Traore probably needs to get his agent working on getting him out of there. Brentford. Mikkel Damsgaard. It hasn't worked for him in the Premier League. I don't think he's going to get nearly enough opportunity. I think what he needs is a run of games to play himself into form, and he's not going to get that at Brentford. And at 24, I think he probably needs to move on before he loses too many more years. Brighton and Hove Albion, it's hard to say because there's a lot of opportunity there. But when I look at someone like Abdullah Sima, he's been owned by Brentford for 3 years. He has played 0 games for Brentford. He had a really good loan at Rangers last year, a decent loan the year before at Angers. I think he needs to move on. I think he's got a ton of talent, showed himself to be very promising at Slavia Prague, did have a bad knee injury, but last year it looked to me like he bounced back from it. But when you look at their forward options, it's pretty obvious he's not going to get many games. So he's the obvious one from there. Chelsea, it's very obvious it's Trevoh Chalobah. Needs to get as far away from Chelsea as he possibly can. The treatment he has received by that club is nothing short of a disgrace for a player that came through their academy, one that they should be holding up as an example of, look what you can become if you join our academy. The treatment is just disgusting. So he needs to move on. Crystal Palace next. I'm inclined to say Ahamada, because I think he's got really good potential to be a very, very good midfield player. But he's been there now, a year and a half? I think a year and a half. He played 8 games in that first half season. He did play 23 last year, but very few starts. And he's only 22, so maybe he just needs to get away on loan. Maybe that's all he needs, is to get away on loan. But Wharton, Doucouré, Hughes and Lerma are all going to be ahead of him. And they've been linked with Chukwuemeka, who I'd imagine plays in the double pivot for them. And even though I would rather have him than Will Hughes or Jefferson Lerma moving forward, they're better players now, so they're going to play more now. So I think Ahmad is the one from there. But again, maybe just a loan for him. Because I do think if he went away on loan for a year, he could come back in 24, 25, and potentially Doucouré has moved on, or Wharton has moved on, or Hughes has moved on. I think Lerma will be there because he signed, I think, a 3 or 4 year contract, and he's on good money and he's a good player. And he's older, so I don't think they'll be selling him. I do think there's going to be an opportunity for him in time, just not now. So for him, I would look to leave. Everton. I mean, it could be any one of the few here, really, couldn't it? But I mean, if we're going to be honest, Michael Keane. Like, it's hidden. You could say Mason Holgate either, but if I was them, I'd rather have Holgate than Keane because he's more versatile. But if I'm Keane, I'm looking at Tarkowski's a nailed-on starter, Brandtwaite's going to be a starter, and they spent 20 million on Jake O'Brien. They probably made him some guarantees, so he's going to become the third choice. Now, I don't think Michael Keane is good enough to play in the Premier League anymore. I think the lack of pace is just so hard for him to overcome, and he just makes the most brainless decisions. So Michael Keane, for the love of God, go and play in the Championship. With Fulham, it's hard to say, really. It's not a huge squad, but Kevin Mbabu is probably the one I'd say. Because you've got Tete and you've got Castagnet. So he's the third right back. So I think for that reason and that reason alone, even though I do quite like him as a player, I think he should look to move on and play elsewhere. Ipswich says this is hard because they've just come up. But I think George Hurst is the one. I think he's the one that makes sense. They've got and he's a good player. They've got a lot of striking options. And if they bring in Broja, I think it's basically telling Hurst, like, your third or fourth, your fourth choice. Because you've got Delap, you'd have Broja, and you've got Al Hamadi, who I think is ahead of him as well. So George Hurst is who I'd say for Ipswich. But could understand fully if he wanted to stay and just experience a season of the Premier League. Leicester City, Conor Cody. At this point in his career, Conor Cody should be wanting to play every game. He's 31 years of age. It's only 2 years since he's in the England squad now. I don't think he's ever going to get back, and I don't think personally he should ever have been in the England squad. But he was in the England squad consistently for 3 years and got 10 caps. He was a regular in the Premier League up until 2 years ago. Even at Everton, to be fair, he was a regular for a good chunk of that season. I think he needs to move on. I do. I think he needs to move on. I think there's a bunch of Championship teams where Conor Cody could play and do well. So, yeah, Cody. Liverpool is easy. It's Nat Phillips. For the love of God, please, someone let that lad leave and let him go and play anywhere. Like, he's a Championship level player. You're asking for 8 million. Championship clubs can't pay that. Take 4 and just call it a day. Man City. Pep uses his squad fully. So he's going to play everybody at some point. But I would say João Cancelo. You're not going to be first choice. You're a good player. You'd start for a lot of clubs around Europe. City are asking for too much money for anyone to buy you. I would say João Cancelo is the one. But it's probably going to have to be a loan. Manchester United. Facundo Pellistri would have been an obvious one, but he is already on his way. I think he's going to Panathinaikos. So after him, I'm inclined to just say Victor Lindelof. He's 30 now. He's never going to be first choice there again. He's been there 7 years. It has largely been a disappointment. And it's quite clear this manager doesn't fancy it. So Victor Lindelof, move on. The Toon. Jamal Lewis. Obvious one. You could put Matt Targett in as well. Whichever of them is deemed the fourth choice left back should leave. They're both good players, both capable of starting in the Premier League. They should probably both move on, but I think they'll probably only let one go, just given the injury issues they had last year and the fact that they need Dan Burn at centre-back a bit more. I think Lewis is the better player. So if I'm his agent, I'm pushing him to get as far away as possible. Go and play and have your career. Nottingham Forest. Plus, he wasn't bought in under this manager, so I think he's probably fourth. Go and have a career somewhere. Nottingham Forest. I mean, if he's not going to be given opportunities, then Emmanuel Dennis. Just seems simple to me. He's a really good player. He deserves to be playing, and if he's not going to get opportunities there, he should go. Southampton. A lot of players in that squad. I'm going to say James Bree. Your third choice right back. You're only at the club because Nathan Jones came in from Luton and wanted somebody that he knew, so he brought you in. You're a talented player, but you're a championship level player. So there's championship clubs where you could absolutely go and make yourself first choice. Go and do that. For Spurs, Giovanni Lo Celso. He's too good to be sitting on the bench. He's not really suited to the Premier League. Half of La Liga would love to have you. Go and play in La Liga. And then West Ham, it's got to be Danny Ings, doesn't it? He's the fourth choice striker. You've got Antonio Fulkrug and Bowen will play ahead of him. Danny Ings needs to leave. Last but very much not least would be Wolves, who have a ludicrously big squad of largely not good enough players. I would say Craig Dawson needs to go. 34, you don't want to be spending the last days of your career sat on the bench at Wolves. If you wanted to sit on the bench, you could have done so at West Ham. You pushed to go because you wanted to go and start. You're not going to be a starter anymore. Craig Dawson needs out of Wolves. And there we go. That is all 20 teams and the one player that needs to leave them the most. I'll see you after this. Right, welcome back. So, it is gossip time. Let's have a look. We do have some breaking news that Chelsea have agreed a fee with Atletico Madrid for João Felix, which will facilitate Conor Gallagher to go to Atletico Madrid. Leicester have also confirmed the signing of Ollie Skip from Tottenham today. And there is reports, though not confirmed, that Ilkay Gundogan will leave Barcelona after just one season. Now, he said recently he didn't want to leave, but obviously talks have taken place. I think his wages became problematic for them because they are broke. So it looks like Gundogan will leave, which should allow them then hopefully to register Dani Olmo. Put in something that is, out of a cartoon, it appears like Barca contacted City and offered them Gundogan for Rodri. And City got the hump and have now told them that they have to pay what they owe on the Ferran Torres deal, which is a couple of years old, or they're going to sue them, which isn't great at all. Let's see now. Joe Gomez was left out of Liverpool's squad against Ipswich to explore possible transfers. Newcastle, Villa, Fulham, Chelsea, Palace, Bayern, loads of clubs interested. Who knows where he ends up. Liverpool are understood to be not actively looking to sell Gomez, with Arne Slot happy for the player to fight his way back into contention. Fenerbahce boss Jose Mourinho was ready to approach Tottenham about Giovanni Lo Celso. I hope he goes to Spain and not Turkey. He's too good for the level of Turkish football. There's a couple of really good teams in Turkey, but a lot of the league is crap. That be said, though, must be said, the lifestyle is fantastic by all accounts. Turkey is a beautiful place, and the culture is fantastic. So if he wants something very different, and they pay well, then it could be. But from a footballing point of view, go to Spain. Aston Villa, Roma, and Real Betis are also interested. Betis is the move. Oh, Roma wouldn't be bad either, but Betis is the move. Ilkay Gundogan has told Barcelona, blah, yada, yada. Wolves are in a battle with Fenerbahce, Sevilla and Marseille to sign Ansu Fati on loan. Okay. Southampton are in talks with Sporting Lisbon over a deal for Matthias Fernandes for a fee worth up to 60 million. Now, he is outstanding. I'm stunned Sporting would consider letting him go. Genuinely. He is a massive talent. Dominic Calvert-Lewin could leave Everton before the transfer window, with Sean Dyche keen to sign a midfielder and another winger. Manchester City are preparing to offer Rodri double your money as a pay rise, topping his weekly salary up to 375. Yeah, because we all believe that's all he earns right now. Yeah, 100%. No, we all believe that that's what they'll be paying him, definitely. Georgi Mamardashvili has his heart set in a move to Liverpool, and Valencia will let him go when they've lined up a replacement. They've actually already signed a replacement this past summer. Manchester United are keen to beat Liverpool to the signing of Mamardashvili. United spent 50-odd million on a goalkeeper last summer, so let's not be ridiculous. He's also turned United down, which is what prompted them to sign Onana. Crystal Palace are advancing in talks with Maxence Lacroix. Jakub Kivor could leave Arsenal before the end of the transfer window, but no deals are currently closed. I would guess he'll go on loan with an option to buy to an Italian club. Bayern Munich are open to offers for Leon Goretzka. Without the juice, he hasn't been very good. Chelsea attempted to sign Federico Chiesa in a swap deal for Raheem Sterling, but it broke down over the England winger's wages. Yasser Asprilla will not be joining Girona, with Porto now said to be best placed to sign him. Leicester are facing 2 separate points deductions from the Premier League for breaking spending rules. Moving on, representatives of Ivan Toney are in talks with Al Ahly in the Saudi Pro League. Manchester United are not interested in a deal for Toney. Man City want Pep Guardiola to decide on whether or not he will sign a new contract by Christmas. His contract currently runs out next summer. Nottingham Forest, Villarreal, Sevilla and Valencia have registered interest in Alex Moreno. If Forest were going to play a back three with wing-backs, then he would make sense for them. As a full-back, no. Panathinaikos are in talks with Manchester United over a deal for Facundo Pellistri. Atletico Madrid have not ruled out a move for Javi Guerra as their deal for Conor Gallagher stalls. Now, looks like the Gallagher deal will happen, so I guess the Guerra deal is off. Liverpool will wait until January to sign a star midfielder. It's Football Insider, so you just throw it in the bin. Fulham have reopened talks with Manchester United over a deal for Scott McTominay. Yuck. Napoli sporting director Giovanni Manna refused to rule out a move for McTominay. Okay, they're still trying to sign Billy Gilmore. The Serie A side have also agreed a deal to sign David Neres, who's an enigma of a player. Las Palmas have made a bid for Carlos Vinicius, who's also wanted by Corinthians. And Crystal Palace are leading the race to sign Carney Chukwuemeka. So there we go. That's all the gossip for today, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.